Okay, so we're gonna be doing the Redux Tool Kit with Persistor, so we're gonna be synchronizing the basically your store with local storage, and that's it. Okay, so this is create React app TypeScript, so just create React app. You don't have to do TypeScript. I will write it as if it was JavaScript. So yeah, so just have create React app. Right, so the first thing we want to install is, I'm gonna link in the description below kind of like docs for it, like this file and then this file. So everything I do will be coming from either one of those. Okay, so we're installing. Let me just make a note. Link docs in description. Okay, so this is Redux Tool Kit have been installed, right? So the next thing we need to do is, I have a lot of shit in here. Probably need to close all of it. Okay, source. Now I'm gonna be deliberately probably calling stuff weird names so that you can see where stuff is, if that makes sense, right? Because when you read the docs, they call it store, persistor, reducer, everything is reducer, everything is a persistor, so you like, which one is it? Do you know what I mean? So you can separate them a little bit, so you understand what to console log, whatever, right? So we call this Redux, and then we call this new file, and we call this basic store config ts, right? So basic store config is going to be your main store. So you have to remember you're only allowed to have one store per app, so do not have more than that. So we're gonna basically use this step-by-step guide in here, so I'm just gonna kind of copy and paste most of the time, so and kind of like explain what's happening. So we want to create a store, right? So we want to call it basic store config. So type is going to be any. For me, for you don't need that. Oh yeah, and then we need to type configure store. So here we're basically creating the store. And then we're gonna have reducers coming into here, like this. Now, think of, what's the best way to think about it? So we're gonna export default basic store config. Now, the best way to think about it is, that should be correct. So, the store config file, the one you're creating right now, is like an app. Alright, think about it as an app. Like, that's your general, like, think about React, right? You have the app, and then you have components that make up the app, right? So, generally, you import your components into the app, right? So, in store, it's exactly the same. Store is the app, and slices are components. So every new slice that you want to access is gonna go here, if that makes sense. So you're gonna have a general state for all of your slices, and that's how you access it, right? So, but you will see, it's very straightforward. Once you kind of understand what's going on. I'm also gonna use syntax so that it's easy to understand what the hell is going on, you know? It took me a while to grasp it, but when I changed the syntax, it became a lot easier. Okay, so now we have a store created, right? We have store created. We need to make the store available to our app. And the way to do that is we go to index, right? We want to import the store well, let's just call it basic store config. From. Now I have barrel imports, so normally you do those ... thingies and then you look for it, which is gonna be like somewhere in source, right? But I have this thing where I can just do copy relative path like this, and then it's going to work automatically, right? I'm not gonna cover how to do that in this. It's a totally different. I have a tutorial how to do that, but it's called a root or barrel or something like that. I don't remember the name, but it's pretty cool. But you can do your. I think it's honestly, I think it's gonna be something like this, right? But like on my one, whatever. Anyway, whatever. So next thing we need to do is we need to import a framework, right? Which is gonna be, let's just call it Redux in here. So let's put everything in here. So we need to import, I think it's provider. And from, let me just zoom in so you can see better. Yeah, there you go. Import provider. We don't need this thing anymore. Import provider from React Redux, right? Yeah, so now strict mode, I'll just get rid of it. We don't need it. So provider goes here, and then store is gonna be whatever we imported, right? That's gonna be our store. Like so. Okay, so now what happened? We made the store available to our entire app. That's it. Done. Okay. So next thing we're gonna do. Holy moly, why is it 7 minutes already? Anyway, so next thing we're gonna do is we are going to create a slice. So we're gonna create a slice and we're gonna call it count. Let's call it count slice. CS. So we import create slice. So we need const initial state equals object, and we call it count from store 0. Now, well, I'm not going to cover that, okay? Because I was going to say that it's going to complain that this is not a serialized blah blah blah, but whatever. Whatever. Okay. So slices basically have initial state, and then you just create slice. So const store count. That's gonna be the. No, actually, we call it the same name as the name of the file, right? I think because it's kind of like a component in a way, you know. So, and we need to export it as well. No, actually, we don't. We can just count slice equals create slice like this, and then we want name, which is going to be count. Honestly, the name is completely irrelevant. You can call it whatever you want. Count slice is equal to. It's probably going to complain that it's has no type. Okay, then initial state is equal to initial state, which is this thing here. You can just write initial state and ES6 is going to do it, but I mean, for you not to get confused, I'm just gonna put it in here. So this refers to this basically. And then finally we want reducers, I think, right? Is it plural? Yeah. So reducers are your functions, right? So let's do increment. So increment state, it's probably gonna complain that it's. Well, let me try without, because I have to respect the TypeScript. So this will be. So state, in this case, state refers to initial state, right? So we know that state dot count from store, whoops, is equal to state count from store plus 1. I think it's okay. The next thing we can do is we can export default count slice. Now, normally they don't do it this way, but I will show you why I'm doing it for tutorial, so you can see how everything everything ties to this thing here. So I'm gonna console log this count slice, so you'll be able to see it, count slice in here. Alright, so now there's two things you need to do. One thing is you need to add this slice into your store. Remember, store is the app, slices are the component. So this component needs to be added into your store app, or whatever you want to call it, right? So we go to our basic store config, right? And we need to import it. So we call them slices in here, right? So import count slice from, and I'm gonna do my magic thing again. Okay, so now we are okay. So here is where you can name it anything you want, right? So any, let's call it shake and bake, shake and bake, like that. Okay, so now every time you go in a component, you go state dot shake and bake, it will refer to this slice here. So you will see that name is in there, initial state is in there, reducer is in there, whatever, everything is in there, right? Maybe I should do a different name. I don't know, let's just keep it shake and bake, whatever you want. Call it whatever you want. Oh, it says TSX is not allowed. Yeah, okay. Fine, okay. So now, what are we gonna do next? Yeah, so now let's go to the component. And here we need to import hooks. Okay, so we need to import two hooks. One is use selector, and one is use this. Well, let's do use selector first, so it's easier to understand. From React Redux. Okay, so use selector is exactly the same as set state. Well, you can think about you can think about. Do you know the way you have const state, and then you have set state, right? Like this, and then you have React use state like this, and then we have value, which is like whatever value, right? Okay, so state is like you want to extract the state. You need to use selector for Redux. Use selector and state are the same thing. Like, I'm just saying, metaphorically speaking, right? So when you're using use selector, you will be accessing this value here. So the way it flows, it's going to be a little bit confusing, but I'll explain it to you, and then I'm going to show it to you, okay? Well, let me just, yeah, so look, use selector, you're going to call it, you're going to call the state, let me just show it this time. I just const count equals use selector. Okay, so it's a function. Any like this, and then let's console log state like this, so we'll be able to see what's going on. Is it complaining? No, it's not complaining. And then maybe return state dot shake and bake dot, what's the name of the thing? Like this. I just need to put it so that the console log is going to work. That's why I'm doing it, you know. Okay, let's see, what do we have here? We ain't got anything happening. Oh, I think it's because it's not even loaded. Is this thing working? npm start maybe. Okay, so we're loading. Okay, we're not seeing anything. I wonder why we're not seeing anything. It says store does not have any valid reducer. So we have done something incorrectly. One sec, let me fix this thing. Oh my god, yeah, I remember what I did wrong. Okay, so in here you need to do reducer like this. Then it's going to work. Is everything working now? Yeah, everything's working now. Yeah. What's the best way to show this? Okay, let's ignore this for a sec. Let's just ignore this for a sec. So, what does this slice contain? Right, so we're gonna console log it, and I'm going to show it to you. So, we probably need to refresh. Yeah, okay. So, here's the slice. Slice has name, which we named reducer. So, reducer goes into the store, like a component. And then actions are all of the functions that are going to change the state. And that's it. Everything else is kind of BS in here. You don't need to think about it. So actions and reducer are the most important. So the first thing you need to do is you need to put reducer into the store, right? So we go to the store, and then we import the slice, and then we put reducer in here, and then we name it. I named it shake and bake, which is kind of whatever, right? So now, yeah. So now this state, so every time you use useSelector or use dispatch, state will refer to this this object here, pretty much. Just think about dot notation. State dot shake and bake is gonna be this slice. It's gonna be this slice, and you can add more slices as you want, but state dot whatever slice name is, and then you have access to those actions, basically, right? So in here we want to just see the state, right? So we want to do I'm gonna write this is global state. There you go. So you see this humongous object is in here. You see, there it is. Count from store, reducers, and you have the states in it. Right, so this object is essentially your kind of like your local state, like, if that makes sense. And now you can put it like, oh, we need to return it. My apologies. So now we need to do return state shake and bake. So now remember, we are accessing shake and bake, right? So we can access this thing here. This thing here. But you can actually see it. You see? You see there is this, there it is. You see? So now we can just put it in here, and then that's about it. It's going to display. You see, there it is. I'm gonna make it probably bigger. Something like H1 maybe. Okay, so account is created. We're gonna do HR. Look at this. Okay, so next thing we want to, let's say, make a change to this count. Right, so how do we do that? So the next thing we need to do is we need to import use dispatch. So use dispatch is like set state. Pretty much only for global. And again, let's do. Well, let's do. What are we gonna do? We need a button, right? Button increase. And then we want on click equals to handle increase. So we want a function. Whoopsie. Am I recording or am I trolling? Yeah, I'm recording. So function handle increase. Okay, so the way it works is just very simple. Dispatch, right? Dispatch. And then we are doing, I think it's... Oh, wait, yeah. We need to import the slice into here. So what we need to do is we need to import count slice from whatever this thing is. Like so. Now remember, count slice had actions. Do you remember the actions, right? So now we're gonna count slice dot actions, and we're gonna use increment, and that's it. So whenever you want to use one of the actions from the slice, you gotta use dispatch basically, right? And we need to do this const dispatch equals use dispatch. Otherwise it's not going to work. So we need to activate this magic dispatch function, right? So now we're gonna pass dispatch, and here we are simply passing count slice, I think, right? Like this. Well, let's... Yeah, well, it's dot actions dot increment, and we want to call the function. Remember to call the function, otherwise it's not going to work. What's complaining about this thing again? My apologies. And then that's it, and this is going to work then. You see? Now it's increasing. Now why is this working? Because if we are going to console log, let's just console log the count slice. Well, we don't. Do we really need to do this? Yeah, let's just do it in here. This is slice. I just want to explain it to you why exactly it's working. I do not need to. Okay. So we are console logging global state. So we know that in global state we have shake and bake, which points to the state. Well, it points to the slice and the slice state, right? And the second thing we're gonna see is the slice that we imported again has actions and reducer. Again, reducer goes into your store as a store is the app, reducer is the component that goes inside the store, right? And then this slice also have actions, and if we want to trigger those actions, we need the name of the store, well, my apologies, the name of the slice, and then the action we want to call, which is increment, and then that's about it. Does that make sense? And then it's going to work. Now you also have to remember that this thing works exactly like standard state and use state hooks. Well, standard use state, right? So every time state changes, component re-renders. And you also have to remember that each component has corresponding slices. So if one of the slices, God knows where, changes, this component is not going to re-render unless its corresponding slice is going to change, if that makes sense. So it's, in a way, it's a very smart system. Otherwise, you can just use. Otherwise, it will be pointless because you can just use context, you know, in a way, because it does the same thing then. All right. So okay. So now the second thing I'm going to show you is how to create a slice with a argument in it. Okay, so increment by amount, like this. So here we're gonna have state, and we're gonna have action. Is it called actions? Or let me just have a look, 1 sec. Yeah, action. Okay, so again, it's the same thing. So it's gonna be state count from store is equal to state count from store plus, and then action dot payload. So every action, so I don't know how to explain it to you, but when you're putting argument in here, that argument, well, let me just console it so you see it. Action. You will see that inside of every action, it's like an object, and this action, that payload, is gonna be the argument that you're gonna be passing into this increment by amount. And that's it. So you can think of this as a simple kind of like arg, like this. The only way to access it is just action that payload, and then that's it. If that makes sense. So I'm gonna create a button on click, handle increase by amount, like this. And then we're gonna do, I don't know, hello, increase by amount, okay, like this. And now we need to create this function. Now you can do all sorts of things. You can do like an input field if you want, and pass e target value in here, and then pass it into the payload. But I'm just gonna do a simple one, right? So now again, we need to call dispatch because we want to. It's a function. We want to pass the slice. So it's gonna be count slice. It's gonna be dot actions. And then that, what was inside of it? I think it's called increment by the amount, yeah. And in here we want to pass action.payload. We want to pass an argument. Do you remember, like, when I said it's going to be... Whatever goes in, whatever we pass into that, whatever we pass in here, right, is gonna appear in action object.payload. And that's it. So we're gonna put 5. Okay. So now, if we click on increase by amount, it's gonna go by 5. Let's see. And if we go like this, it's calling the increase function. And that's about it. Okay. So this is part 1. Part 2. Should I do part 2? In here as well? Yeah, let's just do everything in one go. 1 second. Okay, so next one is gonna be adding slices, and then we're gonna do the persistor, which is synchronizing local storage with state, so that when you reload your app or log out, log in, the states stay. Okay, so we created count slice. Let's do let's do input slice. Let's just do input slice ts. Okay, so we need this thing. Const initial state equals input from store, like this. Const input slice equals create slice like so. Name input slice and initial state. And then reducers is gonna be handle input change. Yeah, state. Action. Now remember, this is with the payload, right? So again, I'm gonna be state from store equals state from store. Oh, actually, it's gonna be action dot payload. Yeah, I think that's the way it is. Actually, let's try this. Actually, we just stick it like this. Okay, and export default. Now, sometimes people do like, well, you can get it from docs. They do like export, then they do structure equals, and then input slice that actions. So this will give you all of your functions. So you can put like handle change in here, and then you can just import these functions or methods into the component, and they're going to straight away run. But the reason why I do it through input slice is because I want you to see where they're coming from. Right? You can also export default reducer dot reducer and then put that into the store. Right? But again, I want you to see where the values are coming from. Otherwise you might get confused. That's where I got confused, you know. Okay, so now we want to import this into our basic store. Remember, store is the app, and these guys are components. Whoopsie. Like so. So let's put, let's just call it input slice. Well, this, I don't know, let's call it whatever you want. Input thingy. Remember, this is kind of like the naming convention, and this is the actual reducer, right? So again, this thing can be called anything you want, right? Okay. So now we need to access the value, right? So let's do const input equals use selector, state as any. Again, remember, what is state? State is the object that holds all the slice states, I suppose, right? So we're gonna point to this thing, and then, well, I'm just gonna console log it, and that's it. You'll be able to see it, right? I'm gonna point to this thing, and then input thingy. Where is it? input store. There you go, like this. I'm going to console log the store so you'll be able to see it. Oh, there it is. So every time we type, you'll be able to see where is it pointing. Okay, so now we need some kind of an input, I suppose. Like this, let's do input. And then we need to put this thing into... Oh, actually... Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. So this is... input. Okay, so every time component mounts, we can see it, right? So anyway, it's completely irrelevant and stuff. Okay, so let's refresh component mounts and you can see the global state. Okay, so now we can see that input thingy has the input from store. Do you remember? Right? So state refers to the global store. Global store is a object that holds slices, and every slice has its own state. So from here we're just accessing states, which is pretty much that's the way it is. And that's how the cookie crumbles. Okay, so next thing we need to do is we need to create a way to change it, right? So here we can do value equals our input, and then we want to change the change equals handle input change like this, function input change. Okay, so here we're gonna have our argument, and then here we need to do target, whoopsie, target value. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna put this repo into description, by the way. Repo in description. So there are two things I need to do. Technically, you're not supposed, you probably will not need repo because you can copy and paste from the guide, but just in case, you know, if you want to see all this. Okay, so it's complaining that this is okay. So again, we want to dispatch, so we want to call one of the slices actions, well, functions, right? So we need to import that slice into here. Import input slice from like this. So we want input slice actions, and then we want to pass arguments in here, I think, right? Yeah. What is he complaining about? Let me just console log this real quick. Input slice. Okay, so input slice has actions. Oh, whoops. I forgot to, it's gonna be handle input change. Yeah, I completely trolled. Sorry about this. So, because we want to call this one. So now it's going to work, right? So now we're going to change, and then we're gonna see this thing appearing in here. We can maybe put this thing somewhere. Maybe so it's not so obvious. A div maybe. Yeah, so it's a bit better. Yeah, so now it's here, you see. So now you can see all the states. Alright. Everything is working as it should. Okay. So now the final thing is how do we synchronize this with local storage so that, because right now if we reload, you know what's gonna happen, everything resets, right? So let's say your customer, you know, selects some kind of, he wants the color of the dashboard to be red, right? But default is like gray, so you want the red to stay. So that will be this thing here, basically. Now, it's giga confusing. The dogs are absolutely dog shite. They are just so bad. Right? But I will link this in the description below so you can kind of watch this guy. He explains it really well. And I'll also explain it, hopefully really well as well. Right? And again, everything is in docs. So you see you have a Redux Tool Kit with Persistor. Okay, so the first thing we do is we npm install this bad boy. And for this thing, you do not need to do anything special. Once you configure the store, you just use, like as if Redux Tool Kit was without Persistor, you just use it as it is, and it's going to automatically store for you. If that makes sense, right? So we're gonna restart. Okay, so now we go to our basic store config, right? So in here we're gonna do a bunch of stuff. So we're gonna be copy and pasting a lot of this stuff, basically. Honestly, like we're just gonna be copy and pasting pretty much almost everything. Because there's nothing to do here except for configuration. So the first thing we need is we need to put a, do something like this, Persistor. So this storage means local storage, basically. That's all it means, right? Next, we need to import this thing. Persist reducer. Okay, next thing we need to do is we need to create a configuration for our persist, which is const persist config. Now you can call it whatever you want. You can call it persist shake and bake config. Let's just call it config1. Okay, so you'll be able to see. So key is gonna be whatever is being passed into local storage key. So we're gonna call it YouTube key. There you go. Now there's version, but you don't really need it, honestly. And then storage. Storage refers to, we got it from here, okay? Next thing, we need to import combine reducers from Redux Tool Kit. So we need to import combine reducers. So combine reducers is like, the reason why we need it is because otherwise Persistor is not going to work. So we need to create a combined reducer. So const my, now normally people call it root reducer. Like that's the way, that's kind of the convention to call it as root reducer. But again, I want to show you where values are coming from. So I'm going to call it my reducer, my combined reducer. Okay. And then we're gonna use combine reducers, this thing here, right? And then we it's probably a hook. and then we need to pass. We basically take this object here, right, and we put it in here like this, and that's it. So this is now calling this. Okay, so the next thing we need to do, we need to run this reducer through the persistor and into the store, if that makes sense. So we need to create a persisted reducer, right? So we call it, I don't know, we can call it, normally people call it persisted reducer, but you can call it local storage reducer. Maybe a crazy name, but whatever. Okay. So now we are gonna be using this thing here, persisted reducer. We're gonna be passing configuration into it, which is this one here, and then actual reducers into it. So it's gonna be this one here. So kind of think about it as a sort of like a hook, right, which takes configuration. So this is like options, and then takes a reducer, and basically what it does is it puts everything into local storage and then returns this, which is your normal reducers. It's kind of like an extra step. And then we put this into here, and then that's about it. So this object here will basically be your like everything is gonna work exactly the same. The only extra step is that we are running this thing. We're running all of your reducers through this, I don't know, local storage reducer, whatever you want to call it. But this function or hook is responsible for putting everything into local storage, and that's about it. So that's about it. Everything else is exactly the same. So now the only final step that you have to do is you need to go into your index, right, and we're gonna have need to add some things into it, which is Persistor, right? Okay, so the first thing we need to import a persist gate. It's a thing from, we can just copy and paste it. So persist gate is exactly the same as a provider, right? It becomes a child of the provider, and that's where we are going to feed it. Our thing is our values. Okay, next thing is import Persistor from Redux persist. Okay, next thing we need to create our persistor, which is const my persistor, and then we need to take this, and then we need to pass the store into it, your basic store. So this is your like standard store, right? So this is my persistor. This is like a const, okay? And the final thing we do is we do persist gate like this, persistor in here, and then we put our app in here, and persistor is going to be my persistor like this. And that's about it. Yeah, that's it. That's done. There's nothing else left to do. So from this point, your configuration has finished, and now all you're doing is just using your regular Redux Tool Kit, and it will be automatically putting everything into local storage. So you see, like, we can just type, increase, right? Refresh, everything is still here, right? That's because there is a secret thing, you see? There it is. YouTube kit. Well, we can probably delete this. Delete. Yeah. So you see, this is basically your local storage persistor. And that's it. There is nothing special you need to do past this point to make it work. It's just standard, kind of like standard synchronization, and that's it. Okay, so that's it. This is done. So what I need to do, I need to link the docs and link the repo in the description below, and link the YouTube of Vishal as well. Okay, yeah, take care, bye bye.